able to do from home was to do what's called a screen narration. This is just basically a movie of me going over this last topic. It's not too long, but it's got some main points that I wanted to hit. So you essentially have a blank PowerPoint presentation in front of you, and this is essentially a movie, and it's me, and I want you to fill it in. So I'm going to go into 17.4, which is patterns and trends of evolution. I've got some real goodies for you here. All right, we'll get going. So the first order of business is one topic we haven't covered is one called macroevolution. And macro is just a Latin word which means big. So the large scale evolutionary patterns and things going on over time. So if you think about all these sort of major domains we've talked about, archaebacteria, bacteria, eukaryota, if we think about everything in the tree of life that stems off these, it's been quite a journey. And we look at the whole thing, we step back, and when we look at the tree, we say, hey, we're looking at macroevolution. But there's 6 things that you really have to think about in totality when you look at sort of the whole evolutionary picture. Extinction, how things change over time or radiate out. Now that's not radiation like energy, radiate like the branches of a tree radiate away from the center. How things evolve, but can actually evolve to become similar. That's convergent evolution. When 2 body forms of unrelated critters kind of look the same, it's due to just adapting similarly to nature. Coevolution, when 2 species become dependent on one another and they co-evolve, insects and flowers. And what we call speeds of evolution. Don't let the word get you down here. We're going to look at equilibrium. If evolution is an equilibrium, how fast does it happen? Is it punctuated or is it gradual? You should actually write gradualism right after punctuated equilibrium right here. I would write gradualism. And changes in developmental genes, which is the last topic we'll go over. Okay, first one is extinction. Extinction can happen because a species just isn't adapted over time to surviving in its environment, so it just didn't make it. Or you can have these fluke impacts from space, these difference makers, like this asteroid impact, that really, it doesn't matter how well adapted you are, you just got taken out of the game. So we've lost a lot of diversity. 99% of species that have all ever lived are now extinct. So mass extinctions themselves, I'll just back up here, can be looked at a couple of different ways. For humans, I would say we humans, mammals, got an opportunity on this planet because of the asteroid impact down in the Yucatan Peninsula. So mass extinction events can be sort of large-scale game changers, a new chance. And it caused bursts of evolution that produce quite a few new species. I don't think you as a mammal would be sitting in schools taking lessons from another mammal like myself if that asteroid impact hadn't happened. We were in the age of the reptile, and mammals were on the scene, but they were just these little tiny furry rodent-like creatures. They really weren't a big deal. I'm going to pause and jump out of this for a second. I wanted to show you something really neat in Google Earth. And I've been talking about the Yucatan Peninsula for a long time. Google Earth has a neat little feature. You can see where 65 million years ago the Mesozoic era came to an end. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in here. Zooming, zooming, zooming. So, oh, one sec, just so you guys know. Okay, lots of oil and gas here, Gulf of Mexico. Okay, there's Cuba, there's Florida, good place to visit. Mexico, the Baja, the tip of California. Right, there's Texas, can't miss the Lone Star State. And now I'm going to zoom in. This here is a peninsula covered on 3 sides by water, right? And in we go. Now, can we see the asteroid impact? We certainly can. In fact, they highlight it in Google Earth. This is the edge of where it hit. Very large. It smacked right here. we'll zoom in. So there's a definite ridge on the edge where this thing hit. And we'll zoom in a little bit more. Maybe a little bit out there. But there's a low point here, and it extends out into the water, believe it or not. And when the asteroid slammed, it slammed so hard that it left behind a mark that to this day you can observe from space. This trough here. There's people living in the asteroid impact zone in Mexico. And it's neat when you look at it, because you can basically, extrapolating from this, if it's a round object, you could imagine it would extend out this far. That's a pretty big chunk of rock hitting the planet. Thought that was kind of neat. Thought you might enjoy that. So the extinction events are, like I say, they're opportunities, and we wouldn't have these bursts of evolution without them. Okay, I'll give you a second to scribble that down. If necessary, I can get my TOC to press pause by either hitting the space bar or just using the mouse and pressing pause on the movie. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item here. Now, adaptive radiation is just how things have, how critters have moved out into their environment and taken up these different niches, these different opportunities. And when I say adaptive radiation, the first thing that I think of is Darwin's finches or Darwin's turtles. Now, the way you can think of adaptive radiation is that one sort of proto-ancestor arrived in an environment, and naturally variations in a species come up. And what happens with the variations is some turn out to have advantages, and they do well in certain environments, and others have advantages in other environments. And we saw this with Darwin's finches, where it was really the same kind of bird, but the proto-ancestor appears to have radiated into all these sort of modern, these sort of newer, these better adapted forms. Now, that's not to say it turned into new forms. It's that through its evolution and through processes of natural selection, the most suited body form succeeded in that environment. It was selected for that environment. And that's the hard thing to get to understand, is the whole selection process. It was just a variation of the body that was best adapted. Adaptive radiation. There you go. So moving on to this, what this shows is just the diversity in the types of finches. And we've seen this before, but as you can see, it's all one type of bird, but we've got the strong beaks for the fruit eaters and the bud eaters, and the sharper beaks, right? Either they're reaching, I guess, into a prickly cactus, or they're going after insects and reaching in and just plucking them out. But what we're talking about here is just an ancestral bird, more or less. So, patterns of evolution. The reason you see all these finches is because of adaptive radiation. They've adapted and filled all these niches, all these opportunities on these islands, right? So adaptive radiation has happened in the mammals too. And if you look at a lot of our modern mammals, right? See some, some that look a little funky here, elephants, right? Things like manatees, anteaters, right? Modern porpoise, right? And these fancy names. When you look at them, if you look backwards, you say, geez, what could they have come from? And that's where we go searching for things in the fossil record. Because I always say proto-ancestor, but there could be different versions that these could come from. Cetaceans is a neat word. I always like that one. It basically means whales. And this one is interesting as well. Sirens. I sort of think of Greek legends and the talk of the sirens that used to draw the poor sailors to their dooms. and all this talk of mermaids. It's interesting how that name was incorporated into this critter. When we look back, sort of take a large scope view of adaptive radiation and evolution in general, what we can see is that the mammals did really well when we got just past the Cretaceous era. This is when the asteroid impact happened, and the mammals were able to heat their bodies, little rodent-like creatures, and they were burrowers, and they could get into critters' eggs, they could eat nuts, they could stay warm, so they did a pretty good job of surviving. And this is just the tail end of the two types of dinosaurs. These were the bird-hipped dinosaurs, like Triceratops, and these were the dinosaurs where they weren't bird-hipped, like T-Rex. And now, at some point, we think birds stemmed off of the dinosaurs. We were talking about Archaeopteryx on Thursday, and the crocodiles, they just snuck along and survived. And we think in part that's because they're really good burrowers, and they, along the equator, managed to ride out the whole Yucatan smacking the Earth 65 million years ago impact. But how do you explain some of the things on our planet today that have similar body forms, but they're completely unrelated? When you look at certain body forms of, let's say, fish and mammals and unrelated mammals, like what I'm showing here with the great white and the porpoise and even our little friend the seal down here, they've got similar body forms, but they're not swapping DNA by having sex. So what's going on? Because they're adapting to their environment in similar ways. So even though they're unrelated, something's going on with their body form. It's another little piece in this whole evolutionary puzzle. So what we say is that these have analogous body forms, like similar structures, because when you swim through the water, there's an efficient way to do it, and the best swimmers survive, right? If we want to talk about survival in general and being selected, you have to do well in your environment. So there's some good examples of this. I'm going to pop out here. I'll come back to this slide, give you a chance to write some stuff down. But convergent evolution. Now I'll just make this a little bit bigger. And there's a good little website here. When we look at examples of convergent evolution, we can even look at the old, an ancient sort of reptilian dinosaur, the ichthyosaur, and you can see that large kind of, this is an ancient tail. You see this in sturgeon today, and this sort of body form, this is very good for passing through the water. And notice the bottlenose. And if you look at the dolphin and you look at its body shape, isn't that interesting? Now, while the tail might be sort of in a flattened position here, it's still generally the same idea. And you can see how the body form is set up the same, even in the shark. In this case, I believe we're looking at a great white shark. Here's a neat comparison. This is a marsupial. So it's like it's a marsupial. One you might know is a kangaroo. Marsupials don't, their babies don't go to full term in the womb. They actually give birth to their babies very, very young and nurture them in a pouch outside the body, for example. When you look at a traditional mammal that bears its babies full term compared to a marsupial, and these are unrelated, it's not like they were breeding. Look at the body forms of these two dog-like creatures. They converge. Why? Because this is a very good body form of a predator, like a dog. And compare that to, in your mind, things like coyotes, even think of things like jackals. Ears appear in the predatory mode on the head, eyes in the front, not on the side. See, their eyes are facing straight forward because they're hunting things down, right? So it's interesting. Warm-bloodedness, flight, we've seen all this, where it's something that was evolving because it was a good idea in the evolutionary scheme. Here's how flight works. The whole concept of a wing, well, we see wings on airplanes. You get air going over the top slower than the bottom, and you get lift. Well, bats can do flight. Here's how birds do flight. Here's how the pterosaurs did flight. Now, the wings might look different, but they're all wings. So, what we're looking at is a case of convergent evolution. These are all things trying to inhabit the air. So if you're going to inhabit the air and if you're going to exploit the sky, then there must be some kind of environmental pressure for you to develop wings. Those who develop wings are going to do really well there. Not that every wing needs to be the same, but flight is flight. I think that more or less makes the point. So I'll come back here. So what you have to have are what we call analogous structures. So you have to have, analogous just means similar. In the case of these guys, they have to have similar kinds of fins, right? Long stream fusiform body shapes. In the case of the flyers, they had to have wings that would work in the sky for gliding, creating initial lift, etc. This is what we call convergent evolution. Now, some things co-evolve, and I'm thinking of the Bee Movie with Jerry Seinfeld, a movie I really, really liked. And we wouldn't be where we are on the planet nowadays without these little critters, because they help flowering plants have sex. And without flowering plants, a lot of our food supply would be endangered. So you look at them burrowing right in there, just getting covered in pollen. So our little bumblebee friend here has helped plants all over the world pollinate, and the plants have come to rely upon the bees as much as the bees rely on the plants for their nectar. For those of you who don't know and haven't seen the Bee Movie, well, honey is just concentrated flower nectar. That's why there's so many different types of honey. And it's not just the insects that have co-evolved with plants, been along for the ride. Hummingbirds, bats, they've also helped plants move ahead, and the plants have helped these critters move ahead and survive. So what we say is that this is a process of coevolution. Now, there's no converging going on here. It's just they've evolved over time to exploit the help of each other. These plants have special coloration that you actually can't see. A lot of insects can see in UV light, and they're drawn right into the color patterns of these plants. It gets them to go right for wherever they perceive the nectar to be, and the color patterns will get them to go, well, more or less right by the pollen and get covered by it. And it's that pollen that they carry from plant to plant and basically help plants have sex. Plants want that to happen, and they make it happen for the insects. In the case of with bats, some of these plants will literally make a fruit-like scent, and there's ones that will smell like a rotting meat to draw in bats. It's sort of an amazing thing that plants will do just about anything to get their pollinators to come on over. Okay, just about done. When we talk about speeds of evolution, I know the term here says punctuated equilibrium. Folks, what you need to know is that evolution can either be punctuated. Now, here's how you think about it. There's two speeds of evolution. There's a punctuated and a gradual speed. Now, here's how I remember it. Your teacher always wants you to be on time. Be punctual. Hurry, 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 hurry. Okay, that's quicker evolution, happening pretty fast because of opportunities in the environment. But there's also a really slow, gradual evolution, which is what I think Darwin was, the way he saw evolution happening initially when he was studying sort of the work of the geologists. And he thought, well, boy, this evolution thing is going to have to take a long time. Well, we've since learned that some rainbow trout are speciating at a rate of, I think the last statistic I heard on it, there was a speciation of a type of rainbow trout where they figured it was actually speciating every 4 years. And quick evolution, punctuated evolution, can happen, but there has to be a real high pressure in the environment to get a critter to change that quickly. So punctuated equilibrium, well, I would just draw a bullseye right here, because the mammals went through a huge radiation in this period, right? Just like I would say in this period, the dinosaurs underwent theirs. So that's very, very quick, right? But then there can be slow, gradual, just predictable evolution. And what you're seeing on this side, now this is not so punctuated. What this is with the horse is a slow, steady evolution. So this slide is a little, I wouldn't say misleading, but I want you to understand that this is the punctuation and that this is the gradualism. Okay? They're just sort of displaying them side by side. I thought this was interesting. The makers of your textbook threw this one in. And there's this little matter of things called Hox genes. Well, Hox genes are something that we kind of all have as animals. When we first start to develop, well, let me show you. Hox genes, here it is, are sort of like, well, general purpose control genes. These little guys in the middle will represent these little, your Hox genes, I guess I should say in general. And they say how you get put together. Like, okay, if you had to make a human or a mouse or a rabbit or insects, etc., where would the head go? Where would the tail go? Where would the arms go? Where would everything go? And the Hox genes seem to operate the same way. So it doesn't matter if you're a mouse or if you're a fly. They say where all the parts go. So Hox genes are pretty interesting because they're what we call regulatory genes. But they're homologous in the sense that homo meaning same and logos meaning structure. We've all got Hox genes. They're the same kind of genes, and they're shared sort of throughout the animal kingdom amongst sort of more advanced critters. And they say how an embryo develops. Well, in your slideshow, pop back to that, what they're talking about is that Hox genes are more evidence kind of evolution because they lay out our body plan. And if there is a major problem with your Hox genes, like for example, you get a leg for a leg on your face, like this little fella had here, then that can suggest something more startling going on in evolution, sort of a larger change. But Hox genes, you should really just understand, are the genes that turn on our development. And if there's changes in the way that our development is expressed, then it suggests that we're undergoing some form of evolution. Okay, so I have a neat little thing for you that I sort of put off to the side here. And I'm screen recording a YouTube video. This is called the Convergent Evolution of Wings. So strange I had to record it by somebody named Naomi. So enjoy. I'm going to go full screen. There you go, the convergent evolution of wings, with all the little jittery video play. The crazy stuff you can find on YouTube. Okay, so folks, at this point, that's it for Chapter 17. So if you've looked on the Twitter, just in case anybody forgot, I'll zoom in and assist you. www.twitter.com/Mr_Bleeker. Hey, how about that? Okay? So make sure you get it down, copy it down, whatever. Over the weekend, I sent out a study guide not only to the online website, the e-learning site, right, the Moodle one, but I thought it was a lot easier to just send it out to Twitter. So some of you probably already have the picture by now. Okay, I'm hoping I'm going to feel a lot better. Basically, I've had the flu. So this is Mr. Bleeker signing off. Your test is Wednesday. Anybody who owes me a test, well, let's just put it this way. The midterm is Wednesday, and if you haven't done 16, then, boy, you better be coming seeing me as soon as possible, because I've got no test mark for you. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, have a great Monday. Study up. We'll see you when I get back.